Alrighty, so for the next topic we're gonna be talking about is I think you've seen this before a bit, but we're gonna be talking about the distance. So going back to the whole, well, what if we already have 2 points, right? So let's say we have, let me erase that actually. Well, let's say we have point one, right? Let me call it P1. Let's say you have it at I don't know, 1 and 2, and then we have point 2 at 3 and 4, and you're asked to find the distance between these 2 points, right? Now there's always a formula, of course, in math class. There's always formulas for anything. So my ideal here, you would have to use the distance formula if you're looking for a distance between 2 points. Now you might be asking, Aaron, why do we need this type of formula? This formula is so useful in your later classes. It doesn't even have to be just algebra. This formula will help you out a lot when it comes to finding a distance between 2 points in different quadrants. It doesn't even have to be on the same quadrant. So yeah, and usually the formula for this would be d of a and b equals the square root. Oh, this is such a bad square root. The square root of x to 2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And this is a formula for the distance formula. Now, you might be asking, well, what do these mean, Don't worry, I'll tell you. In terms of just the letters, this is what it means in general. Here would just be x1 and y1. And on point 2 would be x2 and y2. It's just another words of saying the different positions of the graph. So which in this case, x1 would be, 1, y1 would be 2, and then here x1 would be 3, and then y2 would be 4. Right? So yeah, it's just another correlation of how, how do you distinguish the point to the distance formula. So let me give you an example, just to kind of see how to apply this in a problem. So for example 1, I want you to find the distance, right? Find the distance between the points 2, 5 and 4, -1. Ooh, we got 2 points. So let's call them, right? So point 1, what is that? It's 2 and 5. Point 2 is 4 and -1, right? And we're looking for the distance between these 2 points, right? So going back, we're going to be using our distance formula, which would be, going back to it, which would be, we ended up calling it, what is it? x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Let me just erase this 2. There you go. Okay, and it is a 1. All right. So now let's call, each by its corresponding x and y. So here x1 is what? 2, right? And then y1 would be 5. Here in point 2, x2 would be 4, and y2 would be -1. Okay, let's just plug in those points in our formula. So x2, we ended up calling that 4 minus x1, which would be 2 squared, plus y2, we ended up calling that -1 minus y1, which was 5 squared. All right, sweet. So now we have, what is that? 2 squared plus -6 squared, which then we know that it's 4 plus the square, or the square of -6 would be 36. So 36 plus 4, what is that? It's the distance would be radical 14. Since radical 14 is not a perfect squared, that will be your distance. So we know that the distance between these 2 points is radical 40, right? So in order for you guys to see it, in an image-wise, let's graph it so you guys can see it. So we know that the 2 points are here, are as follows. Let me just draw this. Okay, so we know that point 1 was 2, 5, and point 2 was 4, -1, right? Okay, so point 1 we said it was 2, 5. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We know that this is point 1. We call it P1. And then the second point was 4, -1. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 to the -1. So it'd be down here. So that would be point 2. And we usually draw a line because we're trying to look for the distance between these two. And then we did find the distance between these two, right? The distance between point 1 and point 2 was, or is, radical 14. But yeah, and that is how we find the distance between 2 points. Well, what if we just want to find the midpoint of these 2 points? How do we find the midpoint? Don't worry, I got you. The midpoint formula, going back to math, you know, it's still always a lot of formulas. The midpoint formula is as follows. Let me just write it down. Alrighty, it's M for midpoint. Midpoint of A and B equals x1 plus x2 squared, parentheses, y1, no, not parentheses, comma, sorry, y1 plus y2 over 2 parentheses. This is the second equation you're going to be using to find the midpoint between these two. So let's say let's say for another example, example 2, I want you to find the midpoint, right? Find the midpoint of the line segment that joins, point -2 and 1 and 4 and 5. So going back, I tried to distinguish both of them, meaning call one point 1 and point 2. So we know that point 1, we call that what is that, -2 and 1, and then point 2 is 4 and 5. Again, we know that x1 is -2, y1 is 1, x2 on the other point is 4, and then y2 is 5. Right? So we're going to be using the midpoint formula again. So when we do that, we're going to go M from point 1 to point 2 equals x1, which is -2, plus x2, which was 4, all over 2, comma, y1, which was 1, y2, which was 5, all over 2. Let's go on to the next page. Midpoint of point 1 to point 2 ends up giving us 2 over 2 and then 6 over 2, which then would give us 1 and 3, which then this point in particular would give us the midpoint between the two segments. And if you want to see that in terms of a graph, we could do that. We could do that together. And also, let me just write down the other points. So point 1, let me just put this midpoint of point 1 and point 2. So point 1, we said that it was -2 and 1. And then point 2, we ended up calling that 4 and 5. Okay, so yeah, let's draw our Cartesian plane, or our coordinate plane. Okay, so we have x and y. We have -2, 1, 2, and 1, which was here. So point 1. Point 2 is 4 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which was here. So 4, 5, which is point 2. We draw the line because it's between the segment. A segment, remember, contains 2 points at the end of each endpoints. That's what a segment is. And then we said that our midpoint here was 1 and 3. 1 and 3. Yeah, and this is our midpoint, which we ended up calling 1 and 3. Now, it doesn't look like it's in the middle, but I promise you it is in the middle. I just, my graph, my drawings just suck in general. So yeah, but that is how it will look like on a graph. Alrighty, well, thank you for sticking by on the video. I hope this was helpful for our first section in chapter 1. The next chapter will contain graphs. Hold on, Aaron. It will be 1.2, which will contain graphs of equations in 2 variables. And we mean by that, we're going to be talking about circles. Alrighty, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are not subscribed yet and would like to, for future video updates, please feel free to subscribe to that button. Alrighty, thank you, appreciate it, and I hope you have a nice and lovely day. Peace out.